The psychedelic space is continuing to evolve and a lump coming out of the woodworks. You see companies that are going into maybe a specific drug, whether it be psilocybin, whether it be MDMA or DMT. And then you look into others who are doing clinical trials on pain or on PTSD. And then there's others with technology and a lot of different spaces where doctors can meet patients and all the like. And what we want to be able to do is continue to look out there throughout all of North America and the world and find the companies who are setting themselves out from their competitors, but also getting to learn about them a little bit more. And that's exactly why we have Ben Kaplan, you're the CEO of Ehave, coming on today to talk a little bit about your company. My good man, welcome.
Hey, good afternoon, Brandon. Thanks for having
Absolutely.
me on the show.
Absolutely. I appreciate the time that you're taking as well. And, just for investors who may never have heard your story before, if we can start really, really simple, just explaining who you are and the company that that you've created.
Sure. Hi, I'm the CEO of Ehave. We're on the over the counter. We're a Canadian company listed here in the US. We started off in digital therapeutics, working with human trials of kids in a hospital chain in Toronto called Sick Kids. We developed a game suite of video games that work for mental health and ADHD and ADD. And we are progressively moving forward with exploring how to take that to the next level on the FDA and become a therapeutic video game for kids between the ages of 6 and 12 years old. And I took over as a CEO a little over a year ago. One of the things that I saw coming around the corner was mental health. Before COVID, there was a bunch of issues with mental health, and psychedelics started popping up from MDNA to companies like Compass and MAPS to psilocybin and DMT, all these different types of botanical drugs and some synthetics. And then I saw that there were companies that were coming around that were going to start developing themselves into a new molecule or delivery system, and they were going to generate a lot of data. And one of the things that Ehave started out doing many years ago was collecting data on the games, data on the kids, research data. And back in 2017, we partnered with a cannabis company called MedRelief, and we became their front and back end technology. We collected a lot of data for them, and last year, I think, or maybe a year and a half ago, they were bought out by Aurora for a few $1 billion. And then our company sold last year those assets to another large cannabis company. And so when those assets were disposed of, and I took over as CEO, I decided that data would be one of the things that would put us in the forefront in any sector. And so we started building out a new data collection tool using blockchain technology through our partner Burst IQ. And we're finally launching now our dashboard in a demo form to test out in clinical and retreat businesses that are a little like medical tourism, where somebody would pay to come to a retreat in, say, Amsterdam or Jamaica and see a psychotherapist, get medicated, and try to work on their mental and personal health issues. And so with all that, to summarize, we're a data collection company using technology. We're pinpointing in mental health, and part of mental health today is psychedelics. And so we'll be concentrating some of our efforts and time in that sector, partnering with and letting companies utilize our data collection tools in their day-to-day operations.
Yeah, that's fantastic. When it comes to Sick Kids Hospital, actually, we have a very close relationship with our family. One of my youngest brothers spent many years in his early life at that hospital. It's one of the premier hospitals for children in all of North America. So to be a part of that hospital, it's a big deal.
Yeah, it's a good relationship established over 10 years ago. Dr. Russell Schechter, he's the head of psychiatry. He's a chief medical officer of Ehave and an advisor. He developed these games, and we're taking his technology through the process. The hospital just reopened after COVID to start taking in new patients so we can continue our trials. And once we get through a few more hundred adolescents, we'll be able to look at the data and then see if it's viable to take it to the next step, which would be an FDA approval.
Yeah, absolutely. And that it leads me to the next question that I have, and you've answered it a little bit, but I'd like to go into more depth. And one of the biggest things when we're talking about the psychedelic industry is, what differentiates you from your competitors. Like I said earlier, some people are into the actual the medicine itself, the therapy. From this, it sounds a lot about technology and helping guide that therapy. But if you can just explain a little bit more what exactly it is that you're doing within that space that differentiates you from the various different competitors that are within this space.
Well, that's a great question. First and foremost, there's probably going to be many companies that are going to collect data in this sector because there's a data crunch. The drugs have been illegal for so long that most of the data is getting now collected in a university setting or a hospital setting, and there those data sets are going to be hard to come by because of trade secrets and some of the larger companies that are creating those data sets. What we're going to concentrate on is we're looking at companies that are coming out with a new delivery system or maybe a molecule adjustment or taking something from botanical into a pharmaceutical product and that whole path. Having relationships with these retreats are going to be a big advantage for Ehave. Because what we'll be able to do is offer them a product of software, booking, travel, and a complete suite. So when they take in these clients that are going through these psychedelic experiences, no matter what medications they're giving them, which are all botanical, we'll be able to capture that data and then partner with the owner of the data, which won't be Ehave, but in a joint partnership with the patient and the retreat and ourselves to monetize it and take those data sets and then offer them out to a company that's going to create a molecule, maybe a synthetic, and they would like to see how a botanical works without having to go through the botanical settings and trials and tribulations that the FDA or other large institutions might put them through. So we're looking at relationships, being first to market, and taking the same approach we did with cannabis to align ourselves with some of the better players in the industry and offer a unique offering of data sets.
Yeah, absolutely. And I appreciate that that answer as well. And I can imagine many investors who are listening to this story right now. They can understand. Okay, it's a data play. You're going to be going in and teaming up with a lot of different pharmacies, a lot of different companies throughout the time that your company is going to be working with all of them. But one of the things I can imagine are still in people's minds, and you just briefly mentioned it there, is what is that path to revenue? What is that path to profitability? Is this something that is a longer play? There's a lot more research to go into this and things the like, or is it something that you can begin monetizing in the very near future?
Well, that's a great question, Brandon. This was a developmental stage company for many years, developing the games. And we've raised over $9 million to develop these games so far. And that sector it just got a big boost because Akalai, which is a large gaming tech company, was approved by the FDA for ADHD and video games. And they now have an insurance code to get reimbursed, and then the doctors can prescribe it like a medication. So that gave us a big hope that what we've been working on for many years is now there's a light at the end of the tunnel that could be a B2B, B2C, but definitely a licensing agreement with some larger drug companies in the future who want to use our technology. On the data we're going to collect from the retreats and the research companies and medical clinics, all that data we're going to offer out in the future once we have enough of it that has a meaningful event for somebody to be able to get a data set of 1,000 or 5,000 humans that are interacting with this type of drugs. For revenue, we felt that we would partner with the patients to empower them to take their personal health records and through smart contracts and blockchain, let them participate with Ehave by selling their information off to companies that are doing research on different molecules and would need 1,000 users of a drug or 1,000 users with a certain disease. And so one of the things that Ehave has gone out is we've gone and tried to engage and purchase a telemedicine platform called MDLink. They're the largest in the Caribbean right now. They have revenues. We're going to acquire them and increase their revenues. And then we're going to utilize their data and their patient base to drive more data sets to create more revenue streams down the road. Ground zero for psychedelics is Jamaica and the Netherlands. And so we feel that having the largest telemedicine platform and telehealth platform in the Caribbean will give us one up as well to drive revenue streams from that division, but more importantly, collect more data sets. So when somebody comes knocking on Ehave's door and says, well, what data do you have? We have blanket data for psychedelics off the retreats. We have blanket data for mental health issues on depression, anxiety. And then from there, we'll look to partner as well with other companies in the sector. So as they go out and develop their business models, we might look at, besides only selling them the data, looking at them in partnerships to offer them software suites as well, to have them use this as their daily day-to-day operating system instead of an Excel spreadsheet to collect the data, which is what happens in a lot of these situations.
Yeah, once again, I appreciate the answer there, because again, this is discovery mode for a lot of investors trying to figure out your company and really what the story is. And we've discussed what exactly it is that you're going to be doing within the psychedelic space, your past, your experience. We've gone a little bit over, that path to revenue and profitability, but it also a very important aspect of this is that it's a publicly traded company. You're currently trading on the OTC for EHVVF, and anybody who would look at that could see a very volatile chart on there. Can you explain a little bit about what exactly has happened over the last few months, but also from you and I speaking earlier, you're looking to have a potential listing coming in the very near future on the CSC, so Canadian investors can get a chance to partake in this as well. So if you just don't mind giving a little bit of a background around what's happened since starting trading and what we're supposed to be looking into for the next few months to come.
Sure. Well, I took over a little over a year ago, as I mentioned before. And when I took over the company, was trading a little under a penny a share. And I went out to try to raise capital for the company to take it to where it is today. I was successful in raising a little under $1 million US, and I did that at a fixed price, at a penny a share. And so what happens is the stock has moved because of not having a lot of shares in the trading system from the reverse it did back in May of last year. And so when the stock, if you look at a chart, has traded from the low pennies to the dollar range, and then back down to the low pennies, and then towards the dollar range again, those erratic moves are just supply and demand. And so I think today there's a supply coming on from the capital that was raised over the last 12 months. And the demand seems like it's picking up as well, because the dollar volume seems to be greater now than it was in the past 6 months. So I think that the simple supply and demand is what's taking on today, where the stock is trading. And being on the OTC markets, sometimes they trade very erratically. And so this is why I'm looking to list on the exchange up in Canada, is to have a little more stable trading, not being on OTC, but being a dual listed exchange company. And then access to investors as well. Canada is on the forefront of the psychedelic trend, as it was in cannabis. And there seems to be a bunch of interested investors and bankers in Canada. And because I'm listed here in the US, it gives them a hard time to purchase and participate in the security. So I felt that it would be beneficial to all the shareholders to see about getting listed as quick as possible on another exchange.
Yeah, and you touched on something very important there, and it's the volume. When you look at the chart in itself, you'll see large fluctuations of going, like you said, above $1, then back down to that 5 cents or so, then back up and back down again. But if you look at the volume, some days it's caused by a few thousand shares. It's not like it's a very, very high liquidity event. So I appreciate you going into detail because I know many investors, they want to hear from yourself, especially when talking about all aspects of the company, but also just a little bit of understanding of what's happened over the last little while for these various elements. In this case, your share price and the stock chart as well. But Ben, if you don't mind, for the last question for today, and one that's really important for somebody who's watched this, they've heard all these different elements of what you've created. What is to come? What should an investor be excited about, both current and potential, over the next few months that are left in 2020, but then also, of course, for all the years to come as well?
Okay, well, I think 2020, we have, I don't know, a good 5 months, 4 months left of closing out the year. I would like to accomplish closing out my telemedicine acquisition in 2020, and hopefully my SciTech transaction, which is something I did not speak about, but it is one of my first transactions that I've announced, which is a conference in Israel called SciTech. Um, what I look for in 2021 is a few things. One, hopefully COVID is tamed and the hospital is able to accelerate the human trials, which will give us a chance of accelerating it to the US to try to make application for the FDA. And revenue streams. There's been no revenue in the company since day one. It's been all on expansion on production and technology expense. And so, where if I can have a wish list for 2021, is to have a revenue company producing a few $1,000,000 in top line revenue to start, picking up another 10 to 25,000 patients under the MDLink brand, and having at least a dozen retreats that are using our booking system for medical tourism and our data collection tool set. So over the next 12 months, we'll be able to really come out and have an offering of a data set to these companies, which seem like Compass is coming public in the next few weeks. And there's a bunch of them behind that deal. And so these companies, they're going to be creating data sets, and some of the larger ones might not need Ehave's technology, but definitely some of the smaller ones can utilize what we've built out. And then take those relationships and just monetize them in operating contracts and licensing agreements. And hopefully you'll see new technology as well come to the forefront. There's some exciting things that are going on with video games and sound to mimic some of the psychedelic effects. And we're looking aggressively into those relationships to see what we can bring into our portfolio to generate more data collection of humans using these technologies in wellness, and then taking those data points and then converting them into business models once they're proven out that the future technologies actually work.
Absolutely. Well, Ben, honestly, I appreciate very much you taking the time answering some of the questions that I've had, and just going over everything that you've created with eHave and what's to come. Lastly, of course, if someone wants to reach out to you, they're looking for more information, where can they turn?
You can use my email, B Kaplan, as it's spelled, Kaplan at Ehave, EHAVE.com, B Kaplan at Ehave.com.
Perfect. Well, once again, I thank you for your time, and I wish you all the best throughout the rest of this year and, of course, into 2021 as well.
Thanks for following along, Brandon. I appreciate the interview.